Hey, my friends, how are we today? So, on today's podcast, we're going to talk about divorce and just things that this is, to be honest, this is a complete, probably podcast educational for me because uh, it's been 20 something years since I've been divorced and I did not have the assets that I have now. And so, it's just an interesting conversation to have. And so, I brought on Jamie Lima, who is a certified divorce, is it financial
Analyst.
analyst? Okay.
Yeah.
And so we're going to dive into like what is the difference from a CDFA to a CFP and things to consider when getting divorced, and just yeah, it's going to be a learning experience for me too. So thanks, Jamie, for coming on and sharing your time with us.
Totally welcome. Glad to be here.
So let's dive in. So tell us, what is the difference between a CDFA and then a CFP?
Great question. So CDFAs, think of a CDFA, a certified divorce financial analyst, as someone that helps you point in time with your divorce, all the financial nuances of your divorce, point in time, right? Like there's a day when you decide that you're going to get divorced. That's when you should be calling us so we can help, or maybe even before you say those words to your significant other, you should be calling someone like myself to help triage the situation, get an understanding of what's at stake, and maybe start thinking through different strategies you're going to want to employ and so on before you drop the dreaded D word. So we'll, and as a CDFA, we'll hold your hand all the way through the divorce proceedings until effectively they give you the stamp of approval and they give
Sign
you
on
the
the dotted line.
Congratulations, you're divorced is what I got from the judge in my case. And then there's also a little bit of a transition. We do what's called transition assistance after the divorce is finalized. So you may have to divide up retirement accounts. You may have to divide up a brokerage account. You may have to hire a realtor and put the house on the market for sale and then figure out what to do with those proceeds later. We'll work with our clients to help them navigate the transition after divorce into their newfound lifestyle. So it's day one of divorce, all the decisions you have to make all along the way. We'll also help with the calculations of things like child support, alimony, understanding the after-tax valuation of the assets you have, because taxes are taken into consideration in a lot of instances in divorce. We'll work with you on strategy of like, what do I want to keep? What do I want to give up? And so on. So there's all those decisions you have to make in divorce. That's what we'll help you with. All the financial, I stay out of the legal realm. I am not an attorney. I don't want to be one. We work with a lot of amazing attorneys, but we stay in our lane on the financial side, and we let the attorneys stay in their lane on the financial. As you know, as a CFP yourself, that's very different than the work that you and I do in our traditional financial planning setting, which is, hey, Aaron, tell me more about when you want to retire. And how many kids do you have? Do you want to put them through college? What about your significant other? Are they going to do they have a 401k? How are they investing in it? And all of those types of questions and planning around those things, right? So there is some goal setting and getting an understanding of what the client really wants in the end, just like we would do in a traditional financial planning engagement as CFPs, as certified financial planners. But I always tell people, like, the CFP, I start to wear my CFP hat once we get closer to the end and we start figuring out, like, okay, what does the next 5, 10, 20 years of your life look like?
Yeah.
The CDFA work helps us in make decisions today, make the best financial decisions we can, but also melding them together.
Yep.
Both designations and both levels of experience that I have allows me to say, okay, hey, Aaron, if you're going to make this decision today, this is what's going to do 5, 10, 20 years in the future for you. Right. So there's definitely some blurred lines between both roles, but that's effectively how the two differ.
Yeah. So do you work with, if somebody already has a financial planner, do you work with them at all? Or how does that work for it? Because in the middle of divorce, right, like you're trying to, calculate assets and things of that sort. So is it kind of a collaboration if they already have an advisor? Is that something that you kind of look at, or you're just kind of taking financial statements and kind of just looking at just kind of inventory and things of that sort?
We'll work with anybody who is on the team.
Okay.
Right. I am not here. So if you're a financial planner who is listening to this, we are not here to steal your clients.
Yeah.
Right? We are here to put your clients in a much better financial position moving forward. So when the dust is settled on the divorce and they do have some assets that need to be managed, or they do need help figuring out what their financial future looks like, we hand them off to you and you run with it. So we work very collaboratively with I call it team you, right? Like
Yeah.
your therapist, your
Yep.
financial planner, your tax person, your attorney, sometimes your estate planning attorney, depending on
Yep.
how what's at stake there. All of it. We want your
Yep.
divorce coach. We want to work with everybody. We are not here to poach
Yep.
anybody's clients. We are here to make sure that when the dust is settled, you can look back and go, wow, it was a little bit of an investment, but it was well worth the while.
Yeah. And if they don't have an advisor, then because you do wear the CFP hat, you could just naturally transition into taking care of them and helping them after all the dust is settled, sign on the dotted line and like, okay, now what do we want to do and what do we want to create?
Absolutely. It makes 100%,
Yeah.
it's a 100%, spot on where when you've been working with us for 6 months, maybe a year, maybe longer, unfortunately, if the divorce is taking, time, you start to build a rapport and a relationship with people. People start to feel more comfortable with you, and they recognize like, wow, like they really are here to help. They're not here to take my money. And that's always the approach we have. It's a natural segue into
Yeah.
traditional retirement planning, and because we already know where all the bodies are buried,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
we've already have an inventory of the state, the accounts and so on and so forth. So it's a natural segue for sure.
Yeah. So you already kind of mentioned this of like, okay, like if you already know you are getting divorced, like it might, like when do clients typically come to you and when would you suggest that clients, I kind of take from the emotional standpoint, right? Like nothing needs to be hurried, nothing needs to be rushed. And also from a planning perspective, right? Like before you're like, hey, we're done, it might make some sense to come and call Jamie and be like, hey, this is kind of what we're pondering. And I also, to each of you listening, like divorce, I think, has such a bad rap, at least in the Western society, right? Like you hear about everybody having like contentious divorces and like you're fighting over money and like you're using children to pit against each other. And it's just like, how can we do it in the most loving way, right? Like to ourselves, to the people that we, at some point in time, right? Like there was something that we loved about that person, right? So like doing that from a place of love and nourishing and like, how can everyone win versus like, I think sometimes money gets to be like, the bargaining chip, right? Versus like, how do I want to take care of and how do I want to be while I'm going through this divorce?
There's a lot to unpack there for sure. We could do a whole other episode on,
Yeah.
using financial tools and using finances as a weapon and, parental alienation, all the other stuff that goes on in these cases that are effectively just used to create more tension in within divorce. But the first part of the question was
Yeah.
when should somebody reach out?
Yep.
I tell people all the time we should be the first call. If you're thinking, because this, especially in 99% of the people we work with are women,
Okay.
mainly because, and I believe this wholeheartedly now that I've been doing this for so long, women are much smarter than men.
I'm
That's
like,
just how it goes.
men, I love you, men. And
I love
oh,
you dudes too. I love you bros too. But let me tell you, there are so many women that reach out because they recognize that maybe if they let their emotions get involved, and they don't, I mean, and a lot of them don't, they never were the financial decision maker in the household, right? That's just unfortunate as it is. That's how society has really
that's
worked.
what
I
you've
mean,
seen.
you see this in your own life too, right? Like so many times I've had a conversation with clients. I've been doing this almost 20 years. And so many times we have these conversations and it's the dude who is the chief financial officer of the home making all the decisions and the wife is along for the ride. And then the next thing you know, they decide they're going to get a divorce and she's clueless.
Yeah.
So if that's you, ladies, you need to stop that. You need to start taking ownership of the financial situation in the household. But getting back to the question, the reason why I say reaching out to us first is because the mistake that most people make is they pick up the phone as soon as they decide they want a divorce, and it's they call their attorney, they call an attorney, or they call multiple attorneys, and then they settle on one, and the next thing you know, they've paid $10,000 retainer, and all that $10,000 does is get them through the initial stages of filing for the divorce and gathering some information and so on. And then pretty soon the attorney's calling for another $10,000 retainer because they actually have to fight the divorce or they have to go through, take them through mediation. And you're burning money unnecessarily. Now, I understand there's certain situations where it's just going to be heavily contentious and there's no way around going through this without an attorney.
Yeah.
But at least let us help you with that decision. I can sit here, we have complimentary conversations with people all day long.
Okay.
I'm in 3 to 5 conversations like that every day where it's like, okay, tell me more about what's going on and let me figure out how to help you and what your next best step is.
Okay.
And sometimes it's hiring a divorce attorney. Sometimes it's, why don't you hire us first? Let's see where all the financial information, get all the financial information together. Let's start building out, some different strategies, some things you're going to need to think about. And then if it's going to get, really complicated, we'll bring in an attorney at that point and we'll bring them up to speed. But the mistake people make all the time is calling an attorney first. And I'm gonna make some enemies in this call based on the conversation, the comments about the dudes earlier, but and this one coming up about attorneys. But many times attorneys are there to rack up the billable hours. Can you imagine? Think about you, specifically you, Aaron. Like, you're a CFP. You've been doing this for a long time. There's a lot that you have to understand about the world of finance to do the work that we do.
Yeah.
Those attorneys are not trained to do that work. Just like I'm not trained to create interrogatories and take people through depositions and things of that nature.
Yep.
Like, let's just all stay in our lane. Attorneys are notorious for trying to come over to the financial side, and all that does is burn money. Does that make sense?
That makes a lot of sense. I'm pondering this as and I know Jamie said I'm a CFP. I used to be. And I also know how much, like you're saying, how much time and effort and education that goes into that. And also, like you said, and I think it comes from a genuine place, right? Like, maybe the attorneys are wanting to help their clients, with that, but it's also can we stay in our lane, and what do we do really well? And attorneys do attorney stuff really well, right? And letting you, like you're saying, letting you do the financial and like you said, you also do mediation, right? So maybe we don't even need, I think that is the first thing we go to is I need an attorney. It's but an attorney can be from the place of we're not even getting along. Nothing is, but if you have what do you call it? The opposite of contentious,
uncontested.
Yeah. Okay. If you're on speaking terms and you can do some mediation, how much, you're talking about, how much that can save you in emotional turmoil and also financial, if you just you're kind of like a one-stop shop in that regard, you've got all that already rolled in, Yeah. You are the mediator and you are able to look at the finances.
Yeah. And once a CFP, always a CFP, by the way. You're always going to think with a CFP brain, right?
That's true.
But as a CFP, we have a fiduciary standard we have to abide by.
Yep.
Part of that is providing, avoiding conflicts of interest, number one, and number two, giving the highest and best advice we possibly can give to at any time.
Yep.
So when people come to us and they go, the first question I ask always is, "What's on your mind?" And then they go through the whole thing. Right? They tell us what's going on, why they got to be in front of us, and so on and so forth. And then I can go, I can sit there and go, okay, here's what I recommend. You come see me, but come back and see me in 3 months when you get this stuff sorted out. The first thing you need to go through is, family therapy. Or you need to make sure you're in a safe place, because we work with a lot of people that are going through domestic violence situations or financial abuse and so on. And we've got to get them safe first.
Yeah.
Our work, we're not going anywhere. I've been doing this 20 years, so I can wait 3 months for somebody to hire us.
Yep.
But I can help triage them and figure out which was the best direction to go. If they take our advice, great. If not, at least they have some more education. But the mediation piece is amazing. I have a couple that I'm working with. We're starting our first session tonight with them. And the plan is that we have 3 sessions back to back. We have we have a session tonight, and then we have 2 scheduled for next week. By Thursday of next week, we're recording this on a Tuesday. So within 10 days, they're going to have the documents they need in an agreement in place to be divorced, and it's going to cost them less than $2,000.
That's amazing. Yeah. And you think about, and I think this is also knowledge, right? When I said at the very beginning of the podcast, it's part of this is also me learning about this, because maybe that existed 20 years ago for me. I have no idea. That was just I asked my financial planner, okay, give me some names of attorneys and let me go, like you just said, let me go interview them. And then that was my next step, versus, no, this is now an actual option for you. And maybe you do end up going with an attorney, but at least you have the education and the knowledge that this actually exists out there, and that it can be and it can be an easeful process, right? This goes back to how do we want to be in our divorce? Do we want to string it out? Do we want to play the power play? Or do we want to be you know what? we don't get along anymore. We've agreed on that, and we want, to separate and no longer share our lives together. And also, what is a way that we can do that in the when I say least amount of time, you know what I mean? Like, we don't have to drag it out. It doesn't have to be like that. So do you want to share, some of you kind of in a way done that already, like some of your experiences? Like, do you have a lot of people that come in and it is contentious, but you just shared this one client who's like, you know what, in 10 days we'll be done. And like, to the listener, what would you advise, or what would you ask them to consider when it comes time for a divorce, and what you have seen, I guess? Let's say that.
I would. That's another great question. I had a conversation with somebody yesterday about this, and I think my looking back at my own divorce, my biggest mistake was first calling the attorney. Sorry. He's a great, amazing man. He's an amazing attorney. He helped me through this process. We're still friends to this day. So he actually came to my wedding. I'm remarried. Since remarried, my divorce attorney was at my wedding. So that tells you how close we were. But the first mistake I made was to call someone like that, and mine was very contentious. It was very heated. I was promised that it was going to be very expensive, and that came to fruition. But I mentioned Team You earlier, and that's your therapist, your friends and family, your making your workplace aware of what's going on so they can help support you.
Yeah.
Getting your attorneys, getting your CDFAs, all the people like surrounding you, looking through who the closest people are to you, the most important people to you, and putting them on notice and getting them on Team You. One of the biggest mistakes I made along the way was not doing that, and also shutting out my family. I wanted to make sure, for me, it was a way for me to protect them.
You mean like your extended? You mean like your mom?
Yeah,
and dad,
mom and dad, sister, aunts and uncles, cousins, that type of thing.
Yeah,
we had a very close family, and when I decided I wanted a divorce, I was like, I'm gonna keep them out of it. Like, hey, here's what's happening, letting you know, I'm good. And I didn't bring them up to speed on it. It was definitely a shock for them, because I just had played along like everything was amazing for years, when I knew probably 3 years prior that I had wanted a divorce. And by shutting them out, not only did I lose support that I needed at the time, but it also allowed for opportunities for some alienation to come into play. So my ex-spouse reached out to my family, got her claws in them, and the next thing you know, like, told all kinds of stories that weren't true and everything else. And I lost some family relationships because of that. So had I just swallowed my pride a little bit and shoved my ego to the side and said, "Hey guys, listen, this is what's happening. I want you to know I'm okay. I'll keep you posted. Let's talk this through," and let them be more involved in my life, I think I would have done a better job. Things would have went better.
Yeah.
All that stuff has been sorted out now, because we're 7 years, after the fact. But I see a lot of people do that, and they think they're going to try to do it, on their own, and because they're,
I think
for
it's
whatever
vulnerability,
reason,
right? Like, it's really vulnerable to say, you know what, like, I need some help. Like, I remember my dad telling me, he's like, "Erin, I know how you feel about medicine, but maybe it's time that you actually, like, go to a therapist and talk to somebody and actually, that was 20 years ago, but still, like, maybe you might actually need a little bit of help, and it's okay." Right? Like, I think we're changing as society and consciousness. Like, it's okay to seek out help. It's okay to say, you know what, I'm really sad. I need help. But like you say, it's like, it's that vulnerability. It's our little egos that are like, I've got this, and all of that. And like you say, like, it can alienate us. It can, we can feel not supported, things of that sort. The other thing I wanted to comment, and this is just a comment, not so much a question, is like, well, let me back up. It may be a question of like, how many people come to you and they are like rushing to get divorced. And what I want to say to you, if this is you, one of the things is, we're rushing because we're going for a feeling, right? And so once I learned, like, we don't have to rush through anything, right? Like, the reason why we want it to hurry up and be over is because we're trying to get rid of a feeling that we're feeling, versus allowing those feelings to be there. And also knowing, like, you can choose every single, day, every single moment, you can choose how you want to feel, versus, okay, well, because I wrote down this when you and I were talking before, it's like, get it over with mindset, right? Like, let's just hurry up and just get this over with versus, how do I want to be when I'm going through my divorce? Like, so asking yourself some questions like, how do I actually want to be? How do I want my kids to remember me being to their mom or to their dad, right? During this divorce? Because I have been around several people that have, gotten divorces lately. And it is almost like the children know, right? Like they sense the energy, they know what's going on. And so I'm just curious if you have a lot of people that are like, okay, let's hurry up, let's get this over with so we can just be done with it versus really taking the time to not dragging it out, right? But like the rushing is because it's coming for like, I don't like the feeling that I'm in right now,
Yeah. We unfortunately have a few of those cases going on right now where I have to, help them slow their roll, so to speak.
Yeah.
Um, because with the work that we do, it takes time.
Mm.
If you were to tell me that you wanted to start working with us today, it's probably going to be 2 weeks for us to gather the information we need from you, because we'll send a list like, here are the 10 documents or the tax returns and statements and all that stuff. We'll gather all that, start uploading that information to your client portal, the secure portal we use, and then we need time to be able to review it, put it into our financial planning software, make sure we haven't made any mistakes along the way. We're documenting everything. We're crafting what we call a summary of findings document, which is basically a running tab of all the things that some red flags or things we're going to want to talk about through the whole process. And if you do it the right way and you slow down, you take a beat and you follow the process, if you just follow the process, you're going to be in a much better situation than if you try to make hasty decisions just to get it. And I was there. I remember every time my attorney would call and need me to pay another retainer, I'm like, can we just get this over with?
Yeah.
Right. But and that's, even myself, I made some mistakes along the way by trying to speed up the process. So our job now is to help people slow down, take a beat, understand that there is a process and there's a method to the madness to help them get through this. I have a case right now where on Sunday, I'm sitting here watching golf on a Sunday, and I get an email and a message that the settlement agreement has been, the framework for the agreement is in place. I look through this thing. Well, first off, we just started this process. So how do we have an agreement when we don't even know what we're agreeing to? We have no idea what's out there. We have no idea that, we don't have any appraisal on the home. We don't have any of the information we need to be able to make a sound financial decisions.
Yeah.
And then I also looked through the document and I sent her an email back with about 11 or 12 different things that were completely overlooked, completely missing by the attorney. And said, like, hey, I'm here to help you. Here's a laundry list of things that need to be addressed. Are we doing this my way? Or are we doing this some other random way? Because you're going to end up shooting yourself in the foot.
Yeah. And I think that goes back to, here we go with emotions, right? Like when you are in that heightened state of emotions, if you're feeling anger, like I look back and I'm like, I wouldn't have made some of the decisions that I made. I was angry, right? Like that was what was driving the decision, not from an emotionally neutral place. And allowing yourself time to grieve and to feel sad, and to like, how often are our emotions are so heightened that actually is what the decisions are run off of, versus allowing yourself some space, slowing down, feeling what needs to be felt, right? And then coming from like prefrontal cortex, like, like, okay, I can make some decisions here, versus are you responding or are you reacting, And I guess you would be way better at this, but like what I've seen is a lot of people are going through a divorce. It's very reactionary. And here we go back to like, if you know that you can feel anything at any moment, then there's no need to rush through anything, because So I'm curious from a business perspective, entrepreneurship, things of that sort, because I have talked to people that want to get divorced. They own a business. And it seems like fear also drives that decision of not, because they think like it's what is she going to take, or what is, for the business and things of that sort. So to those that have a business that maybe are looking to get divorced, like what would you say to them, or advice or things that you see that, yeah.
If you're not working with somebody like me during the course of a divorce and you're a business owner, you're doing yourself a disservice. doing yourself a disservice, because as a business owner myself, my wife and I actually we run 3 businesses. I run 2 financial planning businesses, and then we run a little Airbnb ourselves. So I understand the nuances of different entity types, and the tax situations that go on, like things like retained earnings and how that factors into child support, alimony calculations, and what counts. How to calculate some of those things and figure out, like, if I have $50,000 worth of retained earnings, does that count as income? Does it not?
Yeah.
Why should it not? I'm a firm believer that it should not count as retained earnings, because if you take every dollar out of the business that you have, you're not going to have a business over time. So there are little nuances like that, like the entity setup, the ownership, the equity in the company, all the stuff, all the legal nuances of it, the tax. Oh man, there's a million things to talk about there. But and then we have some small business owners that have things like ESOP plans, the employee stock ownership plans, things of that nature. If you're going to try to figure that out on your own, how to divide that up in a divorce, or you're going to let your attorney do it, really, good luck.
Yeah, that's really good, because it's like, and I've always looked at advisors of like, I want to be the not smartest person in the room in regards to like, right? Like, I want to surround myself with people that do this all day, every day, and they can give me different perspectives. Because here we go back to, right? Like, if you're coming from a heightened emotional state, you aren't going to be, one, you may not even have the knowledge, right, to even ask the questions. And 2, you're not in that state to be like thinking clearly to be able to ask those questions. I also wanted to talk about, you mentioned about like women and men. And do you think that comes back to, because I would probably have to agree with you. I don't know if I would say that women are smarter. I just think that they are, like what I just said, right? Like, I want to be surrounded by people, like they drop the ego basically, right? Like, they're just like, I want what's best for me, what's best for my children. And they think about that kind of stuff versus looking at it from the lens or perspective of someone's trying to tell me what to do, or they know more than me, and then it's affecting their ego. So what would you say to the men that are listening, that what you've seen, and other than like keep an open mind, and like what else would you say if you have any other advice of what you would say to that?
I feel like you're right. You hit the nail on the head with the ego piece, right? And that's really what it comes down to. I say women are smarter in
I know
jest,
what you mean.
say no, but just for the record, right? But it's the whole IQ, EQ, Mars, Venus thing that goes on in finance. And what I tell men, I'm like, you need to drop the financial beer muscles and recognize that. Well, like, you ever hear the term beer muscles, right? Like, you start, you have a couple beers. It's like the old term when we were kids. You have a couple beers, and the next thing you know, like, you're the strongest man in the room, and nobody better mess with you, right? So your beer muscles, right?
Okay.
If you if you have the financial beer muscles, and you think you're Mr. Tough Guy when it comes to finances because you got it all handled, and you're the breadwinner, and I have the 401k, and I have the big fancy job at work, and all this other stuff, you're missing the whole point of not only the work we do. You're totally missing out on what is going to happen to you in the court of law. You're if the court system, as it is right now, was designed to prosecute criminals. We are now trying to sue each other to divorce and end our marriage through the same process. It is very laborious. It is very expensive. It normally doesn't go in men's favor, unfortunately. And that's just how it is. Right? Yeah. Unfortunately, it does not go in men's favor. That is slowly changing. There are a lot of states out there that are making it a lot more equal. They're reducing the amount of alimony payments and the length of alimony and things of that nature. They're telling women they need to get back on their feet, and that's where slowly that whole dynamic is shifting. We're not quite to the point where it's perfect just yet. So the men that are out there, they're like, well, I'm going to save the money because I'm probably going to have to pay her more money. I'm already paying my attorney. They're missing the whole point. And I feel like they're going to look back and go, shoulda, woulda, coulda.
Yeah.
right? And you're making decisions today that are going to impact you for the rest of your life.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
And
drop
you
the
brought up
ego.
a really
Yeah.
you brought up a really good point about, it's just like what we talked about the attorneys, right? Like the attorneys stay in their lane, right? Like don't bring it over to the financial planning. The same thing with the court system, right? Like you said, like here we are doing criminal stuff and we're trying to infuse, like it's like, what do they say? Round square peg and round hole or something
Square
like
peg,
that.
round
Right?
hole. Exactly. Yep.
You know,
And we're trying to, when we have to get prepared for helping people go to court, or we're in court ourselves, or and so on, you literally have to talk to you have to explain to these judges how some of this financial stuff works, like they're a 5-year-old.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because and I'm the first one to say I'm never going to be the smartest person in the room. And if I step into a courtroom, I am definitely not the smartest person in that room. But they don't understand this stuff. They don't understand the taxes. They don't understand the retained earnings. They don't understand the investments. They don't understand what is the difference between a mutual fund and an ETF.
Yep.
Maybe they have experience with it, probably not.
Yeah.
Right. So, and it goes to your point earlier, and I meant about the whole staying, each other staying in their own lanes.
Yeah.
It's kind of like if you don't go to the doctor and go, and try to triage yourself and figure out who the best specialist is for you, whatever ailment you have, right? You go to your family law practice, you go to your family practitioner, right? Your primary physician. He or she's going to do a once over on you, ask you some questions and go, okay, here are the people that we need to talk to. We need to go to a cardiac person or a cardiologist or a whatever.
Endocrinologist or
whatever, endocrinologist, whatever it is.
Yep.
They're not going to try to do this. They're not going to try to diagnose you or do the work, themselves. They're there to help you triage and figure out where you need to go next. They can do some of the work, which is kind of what we do, right? We triage people, we help them understand what the next steps are and help them through that process. Get them the attorneys if necessary, but we can be the financial specialist, so to speak, on the team.
Also, too, I mean, I don't know if it's changed 20 years ago, but like we ended up actually going to court, right? Like it's not fun to sit on the stand and to be grilled by, like when you're in emotional distress, it doesn't feel very good to be grilled by the other attorney. And also, since it's a public thing, like anybody can walk in and sit down and listen to your court case, like, so just those are even like things to be like, how can we do this in a private, even if we don't have to be in the same room, right? When you mediate, right, you can go back and forth, but like, how can we do this where it doesn't have to be, you feel like you're like with the firing squad, like I remember the attorney asking me, like going through line by line, like expenses, like, why haven't you done this? And I'm like, I have, but like, so like, here you go back to like a criminal justice, like being accused of why haven't I done X, Y, Z, you know what I mean? And so, yeah, like it's such a, like you're saying, there's so many different ways, which for you being with you and doing the mediation and kind of knowing all of the ins and outs, like that's what it would seem like that would make the most sense and feel the most loving and nourishing, right, to our situation.
Absolutely.
And that. Anything else? We talked about slowing down. I just am looking at my notes. Not making any fast moves, really being connected to ourselves. Anything else that you would comment, or maybe I haven't asked questions about that we might have left off, or for people to consider?
One of the first exercises we go through with everybody is we create what's called a My Priorities Worksheet. Called a My Priorities Worksheet. It's available on our website for free, and there's a whole bunch of resources on my website. I'm sure you're going to link to it.
Yep, I'll put everything in there.
You go to allegiantds.com, and there's on the free resources tab, there's a link to this worksheet. There's a bunch of some tax information, and we don't do the first name, last name, email thing. People can go to our website. They can pull the information for free. We have no idea they've been to the website. We don't collect contact information or anything.
I love that.
It literally is for free. On this My Priorities Worksheet, what we look at are three main areas, right? So we look at, what my goals are and my priorities are relative to the kids, to the financials, and I'm drawing a blank on the third component of it, but workplace plans, that, the house, things of that nature, the assets, section. And as a CFP, as you know, one of the first things we do with our financial planning clients is get understanding what their goals are. Why are they hiring us? Are we helping them put a plan in place to retire early, buy a rental property, make sure investments are on track, all of those things? What are the goals and objectives? It's the same thing we do with our divorcing clients. And the benefit of going through this exercise and really establishing what your priorities are, what your goals are through the engagement is twofold. One, it becomes our true north as we're making decisions and just working through negotiations. We can say, okay, well, if you give up this thing, it's gonna mess up this priority you have over here. How do you want to handle that? Right. It also secondarily allows us to understand what the other side is thinking. We want to know, what does the spouse want to do with the kids? Do they want to have 50-50 custody? Do they want to, I don't know, do they want to make sure they're in the best schools or pay for college? Do they want, what about the house? What about the other assets they have? What about this thing and that thing? And the other reason why the benefit of doing that is that it's a little bit of a game of chess, right? We want to understand what the other side is thinking and what their next move might be. So when it does come down to negotiations and we're working through that, we keep that top of mind as well. So it helps us do two things really. And that document is available on the website. People can download it. Just if you're starting to think through this process, and this is a path you think you're going to be going down, going through that 15-minute exercise could be incredibly beneficial.
Yeah. It's like, I always hear, it's like, we don't know what we don't know, right? Whether it goes to the CPA, it goes to the financial planner, going through divorce. Like if you've never done it before, don't even know the questions to ask. I do want to ask one last question do you find that when you work with clients, are they working with another CDFA or are they working with an attorney?
Usually an attorney. We don't find ourselves up against too many other CDFAs. There are only 3,000 of us in the country. And only 30% of CDFAs actually do the work. So
like 900.
So there's 900 of us across the country that are actually doing this work. For
how many divorces happen?
30 million.
A year. So 10%, right? I mean, I don't know what the population is now in America, but like I heard at one time it was like 300 million, right? Like so 10% of the population you got
going to go through a first or second divorce in that year.
Wow. That's incredible.
Yeah.
So is it more so, do you think, is it more so like just more letters behind your name? It's more like a designation thing. Like if you only have a third practicing, like, is it a designation thing? I know I'm asking you to speculate, like, what are these people thinking? But like that to me means like, I think like, oh, they just want more letters behind their name, but like, you're not actually practicing and doing the thing,
I think it's twofold. One, you get into the work and you realize, wow, this is actually really stressful because there's a lot of emotion. It's time consuming because you have to be spot on with the information that you're presenting to the courts and the attorneys. You've got to take a lot of time. So there's that component of it. It's a little bit stressful.
Yeah.
And secondly, I think a lot of these CDFAs that are advisors with big name firms like Fidelity Investments, Charles Schwab, UBS. We went to the IDFA conference, which is our big annual conference, 2 weeks ago, and about half the people in the room that were CDFAs did not even do the work because they were there for the education, but they couldn't do the work because the companies that they work for wouldn't allow them to do it.
Wow.
So they wanted the education. That way, if they do have clients that are going through the process, they can certainly support them and give them some solid advice, but they're not going to be showing up to do expert testimony. They're not mediating cases. They're not doing all the calculations. They don't even have access to the software we have access to. They just have it's more of a information education situation for them than anything.
Yeah. Yeah. More like, okay, this is where I know to like, and maybe it's a community, right? Like they meet people that are actually practicing so they know where to send to, but it's not necessarily anything else you want to add before we send off?
Yeah, no, I think we covered a lot. There's, like I said, there's a bunch of free resources on the website. People can reach out.
Share that. And I'll put it in there, but say that again, your website. And then I'll also put all of that in the show notes so that they can go to the website. And
it's Allegiant Divorce Solutions, AllegiantDS.com. We'll make sure the link is there. Okay. And, if you're, last thing I would say is if you're contemplating it, if you don't know what direction, book some time with us. The calls are complimentary.
Yeah.
Right. There's no requirement. You just have to show up to the appointment. Don't block out time for somebody else that can need it. If you're just going to kick the tires and not take it seriously, if you're serious about getting the help from us or someone else, and this is something that's on the radar for you that you really want the assistance with, go to the website. Literally on the homepage, there is a link to our calendar. You can book a time with myself, another CDFA on my team if I'm not available, and we'll just walk you through we'll learn more about your situation, get an understanding of where we might be able to support you, answer any questions you have, and then send you on your way and hopefully in the right direction. So there's no obligation, there's no costs. We're not going to spam you every day and text message you every day. We don't do that kind of stuff. You'll be on our newsletter. You can unsubscribe if you want to be unsubscribed. It's not a big deal. It won't hurt our feelings. But biggest thing is just don't do it if block the time for somebody else if you're not going to take it seriously, because we have people kicking the tires every once in a while, and it takes away from existing clients and our opportunity to talk to people like you and support folks like you as well. So I'm only one person and our time is limited. So just if you're gonna do it, make sure you take it seriously.
I love that. Jamie, thank you for sharing all of your knowledge. I really appreciate it. Such a fun conversation. And each of you, thank you for listening and watching. And until next time. One of the things that we forgot to mention while we were recording that I wanted to come back and elaborate on is that Jamie said that most of his cases only take 5 to 10 hours worth of work. So he does take a retainer of $3,000 up front. And so I just wanted to put that knowledge in here because I'm like 5 to 10 hours, that's hardly anything. So I just wanted to give that information. And then I'm going to put all of his information in the show notes. And as always, thank you for listening, for sharing your time with us. And if you have any questions, you can definitely reach out to Jamie. I'll put all of his information in the show notes.